1.21.5 is out, and with it we got a bunch of really cool new decorational blocks here. A lot of little natural blocks, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with them. So hi, welcome. Today I want to show you some of the cool little ideas that I came up with on how you can use these in builds. So up first here we have this beautiful tree design from yours truly. I built this and I like it, and it's my tree. And so in the past when I've built trees, I like to put moss in the leaves so that I can put grass on top, make it look a little bit fluffier, just like so. But now with the bushes, we can put bush on moss, and I think it looks even fluffier. Because the grass is nice, but it's a little bit too airy sometimes. The airy is nice, you know, but sometimes I want it to be a little more full. And so now we can do that with the bush. And I just think that's super cool. It looks really, really nice, and it adds a lot to the silhouette in my opinion. Also, if you're wondering, anytime you're trying to build trees or something, for any tips on leaves, something that I always really like to keep in mind is to leave a lot of air. Leave a lot of little air pockets. I think that it's really nice and it looks good and it makes it feel more realistic because, believe it or not, air exists in real life. That's pro tip number one. Don't forget it. Air is real. And so because air is real, there's air in trees. I know, mind blower right there, but it's the truth, and I'm just spitting facts right now. The next sort of actual tip, aside from the air thing, is that bushes can be used as bushes, believe it or not. What? I know, insane. But no, seriously, I think that they're really nice for shading now. So we've had grass and ferns in the game for a while, and so say you're building something with grass, and it's like, okay, that's cool, and you want to add a little more interest, maybe some dark spots, you know, versus the highlights of the grass, so you add some ferns, and it's like, okay, that's cool as well. But just for simplicity's sake, that's kind of like all we have, you know. I mean, there's plenty of other blocks that you can use to add different colors and maybe some values and stuff, but nothing as simple as these two to go with them, at least in my opinion. But now we have the bush. I think the bush works great as a kind of in-between from the highlight of the grass and the dark of the fern. Let me just place some a little more like this. And then I think there you go. They work super cool as like a bit of shading. You know what I mean? It's as if this is the light part of the grass and then there's a little shadow off in the distance. I think the fact that the fern is a little bit taller as well, it helps a lot with this sort of variation in the height, and it just stands out a little bit. And so I used it here, right? Because you can imagine the tree is casting a little bit of shadow. So I saved the darkest parts of the grass for under the tree. You know, I have the most bushes here, and I just think that makes sense. And then over here, it's like we have a little grass clump, and then there's a little shadow there. Shadow there, shadow there. I think it works really nicely for that shading. I know I'm personally going to be using it a lot for shading my terrain like that. I also have a little bit of leaf litter here as leaf litter, believe it or not. I know that's pretty crazy as well. But that's about it for this one. Moving on to the next. Next guy we have here, this is like a dead tree design. Awesome tree design as well. I know, save your compliments. You don't have to go crazy complimenting me or anything. But here I've made a quick dead tree concept, and I put down all of this leaf litter as like dead leaves. I know that's probably super obvious, you know, using leaves as leaves, duh, but I think it's specifically cool with this concept of like a dead tree, you know, in tandem with this specific build. It kind of tells a little bit more of a story. It's like, oh, this tree is dead and these are all of its leaves right here on the ground. So I just think that's really cool. I also added these buttons here, you know, kind of to add a little bit more interest to the ground. They could be twigs or like brown rocks or maybe poop. I know you really like poop. I know you're a big fan of poop, so you could pretend like they're poop if you really want to, because I know you probably really want to. But yeah, so there's that. On to the next tip. Next up here we have a tree with like yellow leaves. This one is showing off the this new dry grass, so it can't go on anything except for like natural blocks like sand and dirt and moss or whatever. So I've got sand here with these trapdoors to help blend it into more of the yellow, and it's just doing the same thing that that first example was doing. And I think it's pretty nice. Also, these little wildflowers here, they could be used as flowers, duh, but I think they could also be interpreted kind of as fallen yellow leaves from yellow tree. Over here is another example with the wildflowers, but I think it looks really nice if you put it on moss rather than dirt. because the moss kind of looks like there's a lot of like weeds and growth underneath the flowers. I think it just gives it more interest and makes it feel a little more full versus the grass here. Obviously each one has their own use case, but I think this one is a lot cuter for a very flowery setting. Up next here, we've got these azalea bushes with moss on top, which is something that people have been doing for a while to make like a little tree. But I think if you put the wildflowers on top, it looks really, really cute. It adds a little bit more of like a silhouette to it, a little more definable, and it just looks like something sprouting off the top. I mean, you could do it with the pink petals as well, but I think the yellow just gives us another color variation, especially if you're looking at it from the top or something. Next up, here, this one's a little more of an abstract idea, so bear with me here, but I'm using the wildflowers as if it's some sort of corrupting growth that's destroying the landscape. And so I've got the pale moss here as if it's like the grass that's been sapped of life, and then everywhere that the wildflowers are, that's where the pale moss is. And so it's as if the wildflowers are like sucking the life energy out of the environment here. And I think this is really nice, at least to me, because it really makes the wildflowers pop, because it's gray underneath, you know, they're like this really stark pop of color. So that's pretty cool. That's a cool idea. I also did it here with the pink petals. These aren't new, of course, but again, like it just really, really makes them pop, which is cool. And then also, if you wanted, you could use the leaf litter here instead, because it is the same sort of block premise, you know, you can do 4 in one spot just like you can with all of these. So you could do leaf litter. Personally, I don't think it looks as good, and honestly it kind of looks a little bit like bugs to me, which is cool, and that's another thing I'll kind of get to with one of these further examples. Next here is leaf litter. Leaf litter, unlike the other ones, you can put leaf litter on anything. It doesn't have to be a natural block, but you can only put it on the top, sadly. But because of that, we can use it to kind of help with gradients, at least flat ones that are on the ground like this. Here's a gradient of it going from like this really dark and dark brown to just grass, you know? And I think it does a really nice job of helping blend and smooth that gradient. And this feels like a smear kind of, you know, as if something like was like going through the forest and then just came to like an abrupt stop or something. Up next here, I built kind of this rundown, gross kitchen. At least that's what it's supposed to be. We've got the cobwebs and stuff. And then there's like mushrooms growing. Someone has like a half-eaten cake out here. And so with a super disgusting kitchen, I figure you're bound to start getting bugs. And so I thought that they looked a little bit like cockroaches or something. Maybe with a different ground, they could pop out a little bit better. But I think the idea still comes across, at the very least, just a bit. So that's cool. I think that you could definitely use them as bugs. All right, the next idea we have here is using the short grass and tall grass in like a beach setting. I think they kind of make the perfect like beach grass. I'm super excited about this block. It's a really nice like desaturated yellow. I think it's gonna be really cool, especially in a setting like this. Also, I used these stripped logs here kind of like as wet sand. I just thought that was nice. Also, I threw in a little firefly bush over here. I really like the firefly bush, but the animation on it makes it a little bit hard to use in like natural settings like this. But I think it goes well here, the colors, and you can't notice the animation too much with all the other plants around it. Up next here is just a firefly bush to show that when the sun is out, like right there, sun, pro tip sun, that the fireflies won't come out. I guess they don't like the sun. I don't think that's scientifically accurate or anything. Well, actually, I know it's not scientifically accurate. I've definitely seen fireflies out during the day. But I found out you can put firefly bushes under something, just have it dark for them, and then they'll come out. And so I think this is a super cool way to make use of them for any sort of setting that we want. In here, this is kind of like a crystal room, and so the fireflies are acting more like magical particles. Just imagine it as like mystical magic things. I've also got the lodestones here because in this update they changed the lodestone recipe to not be a netherite ingot but instead an iron ingot, so they're actually usable now for building normally, in my opinion. So I've got them in the floor right here. I think they're a great building block. I've got them as like these pedestal things, and then I've got these crystals kind of here These are the new cactus flowers. I think they look a lot like a crystal. There's a little bit of green here at the bottom of the texture, but I think it's pretty easy to ignore, especially when you set it up like this. I've got this as a sort of gradient going from like these purple amethyst crystals and then over to these fake pink crystals with a little bit of glass also to help. So yeah, I think they're pretty nice as crystals. I think they're pretty believable. But just as cactus flowers, we have them over here. You cannot put them in a pot, which is really, really lame. I feel like you should be able to put them in a pot, but you can put them on like any surface. So I just have it right here on top of a regular decorated pot. Just shift right click and bam, it just goes right on it. And so there's that. I have it right here on a fence in a pot. And so I think this looks kind of like a little tree, you know, that's sprouting, that's growing or something. So that's cute. And then here, to match the little bit of green that's on the bottom of the texture, I use this lime green glass. And I think it looks a lot like a tall flower. And so here it is as a tall flower coming out of the pot. Here it is as a tall flower just on the ground. I think it looks really nice. So I made this little flower garden example here to show it off. You have all the typical flowers in the game that are like at the same height. I mean, we have some too tall ones that I didn't include, but you know, you could include some of those as well. Let me grab one. Okay, so you could add the too tall flowers as well, but this adds this perfect extra level of elevation, I think, because it's not as tall as a too tall, and it's taller than the one tall. And so it's just very nice, adds more interest and more depth to these sort of environments that I think is going to be very, very nice. I know that if I'm making any sort of flowery build or flower garden or something like that, then I'm going to be using this design. Over here, I was just messing around with the cactus flower, seeing everything that I could put it on. I tried most of the weird blocks in the game, and so these are the ones that I found that I thought could be useful in some sort of way. So here it is on an anvil. I don't know what you could use that for, but it adds a... It makes an interesting silhouette, which could be important for some sort of large-scale building. Here it is on, you can put it on any wall, but I thought the prismarine wall was interesting. It kind of looks like a squashed, like bluish green pineapple or something with pink flowers. I don't know, but it looks cool. Here it is on an end rod. Also kind of looks like a plant. Here it is on the potted plant, which I think works even better because it hides that base a little bit. Here it is on a copper rod. I think it looks really nice when the copper rod is upside down like this. You still see the little bit of green, but I don't really think it's too big of a deal. With the head being like this for the rod, it makes me think of some sort of like little tree, kind of. Here it is on a magma block. I don't think this looks good at all, but I mean, maybe somebody will. But I thought it was interesting because you can put it on top, but you still take damage, which, I don't know, could be used for something. And then here it is on a shulker box, but when you open the shulker box, it breaks. So there's that. I don't know what that could be used for, but it's something. Up next, here we have this like dwarven, like foundry type of design that I've made, just a bit like forge. And I've put the fireflies again underground because I think it adds a lot of atmosphere for a setting like this. It's I don't know, it kind of like brings like a little bit of heat to it, almost like sparks or something. And like the lava already pops, you know, it does like these fiery little pops, which is awesome. But these little fireflies just add that extra level of like warmth and like light to it. I don't know, it just adds something that I feel like fits. It just makes sense to me. And so I think that's a really nice design. I also use the lodestones down here again as just a building block. I think it's very nice. Okay, and then I know typically people say last but not least, but this is kind of last and least. This is not my idea whatsoever. This is something that has been in the game for a long time that people have known about. This is like a TV, and then I've got the lodestones here as like speakers. And so again, this is something that someone else came up with way back when lodestones came out, but I figured that it was worth showing off here just because lodestones are actually useful again. Or not useful, they've always been useful, but usable. Not again, they never were. Okay, let me reword. Lodestones are usable now. You know, like we can use them for decoration, and it's not a total waste of a full netherite ingot. But yeah, so that's about it. That is all the little tips and tricks that I could think of within the span of like 1 or 2 days. So do with that what you will. I'm pretty excited. I think all these blocks are pretty cool, and I think there's a lot of cool stuff that we can do with them, and probably a lot more cool stuff than I thought of in this video. Hi, hello. I actually have one more design here, one more idea. I lied. It's not my idea. I did not come up with it. I saw some people doing this online. And I thought it was really, really cool, and too cool to leave out of a video all about ideas that you can do with the new blocks. So again, I did not come up with this. I'm not smart enough. I don't have a brain in my head, but other people do, and so that's awesome. It's using the cactus flowers as like lotus flowers here. You see, you could put down like the warped trapdoor, or maybe even a copper one as well. Here I have tried out, and you can put the cactus flower right on top. And bam, that's cool. So this is just like a little makeshift pond, you know, with other foliage. I did my other design of like the tall flower, but like really tall. I have no idea what kind of plant this would be. I'm not a plant expert, sadly. Very sadly, because plants are really cool. I would like to learn more about plants. These are kind of like makeshift little cattails. So that's not new or anything either. But yeah, so that's a cool idea that I thought that I should share. If there's any more cool ideas that you thought of during this video that I didn't go over or something with these blocks, I'd love to hear them. Let me know in the comments or something. I had fun making this video. It was pretty cool. I want to make a lot more videos like this, so if you liked it, leave a like, subscribe or something. I'd super appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. That's going to be it for the video. Goodbye!